A new controversy has erupted over remarks attributed to Islamic cleric Sheikh Sani Yahya Jingir, and this time the argument has moved beyond the original comments. Former presidential media aide Bashir Ahmad has challenged television host el-rufai Oseni, arguing that a Christian cleric, Reverend Dachomo, had previously made remarks that were even more offensive. His intervention has opened a wider debate. When controversial religious statements are made in Nigeria, should the public judge each statement independently, or should comparison be part of the conversation? The controversy began after Sheikh Sani Yahya Jingir spoke in Kano State on Saturday about the 2027 presidential election and the possibility of another Muslim ticket. Jingir reportedly defended the arrangement used by the All Progressive Congress and argued that it was justified by what he described as the numerical strength of Muslims in Nigeria. His comments went further. According to the report, with reference to the Christians as infidels and a claim that Nigeria belongs to Muslims. Those remarks quickly generated criticism, with opponents describing them as divisive and inflammatory in an already politically sensitive country. Religious identity remains a powerful factor in Nigerian politics, particularly when political parties discuss presidential tickets and alliances ahead of the election. Any statement suggesting that one religious community has greater ownership of the country can therefore trigger intense reaction, especially in a nation where Christians and Muslims live across the same communities and have repeatedly experienced the consequences of religious and political tension. el-Rufai Oseni then entered the discussion through a post on his official X account. Rather than simply focusing on the wording attributed to Jingir, Oseni posed a question about consistency in the public reactions. He asked what the reaction would have been if a Christian cleric had made similar remarks. The question appeared to challenge Nigerians to consider whether public outrage is applied equally when controversial statements come from religious figures belonging to different faiths. That question drew a response from Bashir Ahmad, a former presidential media aide and prominent political commentator. Ahmad rejected the idea of treating the issue as a competition between religious figures, but he argued that the public conversation should not ignore previous controversial remarks allegedly made by Reverend Dachomo, a Plateau-based Christian cleric. Ahmad's central argument was that Dachomo had previously said things that, in his assessment, were even worse than the remarks attributed to Jingir. Ahmad made his position clear in the response to Oseni. He said, "It is not a competition, el-Rufai, but I can tell you that Reverend Dachomo has said things that were even worse. Both utterances are wrong." That final sentence is important because Ahmad was not, at least in his response, declaring Jingir's reported remarks acceptable. Instead, he argued that condemning one controversial statement while ignoring another would create an inconsistent standard for public accountability. And this is where the debate becomes larger than Sheikh Jingir or Reverend Dachomo. Nigeria has repeatedly struggled with inflammatory rhetoric from political, religious, and community leaders. Statements made by influential figures can travel rapidly across social media, be taken out of context, provoke anger, and deepen existing divisions. When those statements involve religion, ethnicity, or political power, the consequences can even be more serious because they reinforce fears and suspicion that already exist within different communities. At the same time, comparing two controversial statements does not automatically establish that one should be ignored because another was supposedly worse. If a public figure makes a statement that promotes religious hostility, the appropriate question would be what exactly was said. whether the statement can be verified, what context surrounded it, and whether it violates any law. The identity of the person making the statement should not determine whether the same standard of accountability applies. That principle is particularly important as Nigeria approaches the 2027 general elections. Political competition is already intensifying, and religious identity is certain to remain part of the national conversation. The controversies surrounding the Muslim-Muslim tickets has not disappeared, and statements from prominent clerics can influence how supporters interpret political developments. Against that backdrop, inflammatory rhetoric risks turning political disagreement into religious confrontations. There is also another dimension to this controversy. Public figures who respond to inflammatory remarks have a responsibility to provide evidence when making counterclaims. Ahmed's statement about Dachomo is an allegation concerning previous remarks, and it should therefore be distinguished between independently established facts unless the specific statements are produced and verified. The same standard should apply to the claims attributed to Jingir. Public debate becomes stronger when accusations are supported by complete video, reliable transcripts, and clear context rather than social media summaries alone. The controversy also raises a question about the role of journalists and commentators in such debates. Rufai Oseni's intervention focuses attention on whether public reactions are consistent across religious lines. Ahmed's response shifts the focus towards alleged double standard involving Christian and Muslim clerics. Both positions contribute to a wider conversation about whether Nigerians are prepared to apply one standard to everyone, regardless of religion or political affiliation. But there is a danger in allowing the debate to become a competition over who said the most offensive thing. Such an approach can turn accountability into a scoreboard. One controversial statement does not erase another, and the alleged wrongdoing of one religious figure cannot automatically excuse the words of another. If the objective is to protect social cohesion, the standard should be simple. Inflammatory statements should be examined on their own merits, regardless of who made them. As the 2027 election approaches, Nigeria will need political debate that is intense but responsible. Religious leaders have enormous influence over their followers, and their words can either reduce tension or amplify it. Political commentators, journalists, and public officials also have a responsibility to distinguish verified statements from allegation and to challenge dangerous rhetoric without turning every controversy into a battle between religious camps. The dispute involving Sheikh Jingir, Rufai Oseni, Bashir Ahmad, and Reverend Dachomo is therefore bigger than a social media exchange. It is a test of whether Nigerians can confront controversial religious rhetoric without applying different standards to different communities. Jingir's reported comments are now under scrutiny, while Ahmad has raised separate allegations about Dachomo. The most important question is not which cleric wins the argument. It is whether Nigeria can demand the same standard of responsibility from everyone whose words have the power to influence a deeply diverse society. I'm Chimezrim Okoro, and I will see you soon.